Okay, so for the interest of time, we're going to get started. I have recorded or started the recording for this presentation so that in case you have to miss some of it, you will be able to come and see the recording on our website. Probably by next week, I'm thinking for sure we will have it online so you can see it. So welcome. Thank you so much for coming to our financial aid night. Tonight we have Miss Langford from the Georgia Student Finance Commission. She's going to talk to us about state and federal financial aid that's available to our Georgia families. She's going to cover a lot of great information. So throughout the presentation, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and write them in the chat. And one of the counselors from Chattahoochee who is on here, we're going to answer your questions. If there are any questions that we are not sure of the answer, or we just want to confirm that we have the correct answer, we will save those questions for at the end. And then Ms. Langford will help us out and get any unanswered questions answered so that we can all be on the same page and have the correct information. So without further ado, I am going to let Ms. Langford take over and start her financial aid night. And thank you again, everyone, for coming, and hope you enjoy. Ms. Langford, it's all yours.
Great. Good evening. Thank you, everyone, for attending tonight. Ms. Fitzsimmons, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can.
Perfect. So once again, I'm Adrienne with Georgia Student Finance Commission. And tonight we're going to do something a little bit different. It's going to be a little interactive. So what I did was on the screen, I had a QR code. I hope everyone scanned it. So there's going to be a couple of questions tonight where I'm going to give you a chance to vote on the correct answer, and you will be able to vote directly from your phone. I'm going to show you those instructions one more time. You just scan that QR code with the camera app on your phone, and you'll be able to put in that code 892-58756. All right, so let's get started. So tonight we're going to talk about financial aid, because financial aid can be confusing for many. And so we will be spending some time just highlighting the process for a student to acquire funding for their post-secondary education. So to start, I'm going to define financial aid, talk about the types of financial aid that are available, also talk about the federal programs and the Georgia financial aid programs, along with the application process and how financial aid is actually packaged. So let's start off by talking about financial aid. So financial aid is any money used to pay for post-secondary education. So this helps pay for educational expenses. These expenses can be direct or indirect, and all of this adds up to the student's cost of attendance. Now, cost of attendance is a term that you're going to hear from your student's institution. And whenever I say institution, I'm talking about a university, a college, a technical college, and it could even be a career college. So your cost of attendance is something that you're definitely going to hear from your student's institution. And the cost of attendance is made up of direct cost and indirect cost. So direct costs are expenses or costs that are paid directly to the institution. Good examples of that is your tuition and fees, on-campus housing, meal plan, parking permits. Your indirect costs are costs that the student will still have as a student, but they may not be paid directly to the school. So a lot of times that's going to be your books and supplies, any off-campus housing that the student may have. That's actually a cost that they will accrue while they're in college, but they don't pay that directly to the school. Even groceries and gas to get back and forth to campus. So all of these costs are included in the cost of attendance. So again, cost of attendance is your tuition and fees, books and supplies, room and board, personal costs. And the cost of attendance is not exactly what the student may have to pay to the institution. It's a ballpark figure that the institution says this is how much the student may have to pay or may be expected to be responsible for for attending that particular institution for the year. So let's talk about types of financial aid. So if you ask the college graduate how they paid for college, of course, they would say financial aid. Many will say financial aid, but the question is which type? There are several different forms of financial aid and types of financial aid. In terms of forms of financial aid, you have your scholarships. Scholarships and grants are free money, and scholarships are usually based on a student's GPA or academic academic performance, whereas grants are usually based on a student's household income. So we're going to talk a little bit about those two programs mostly, but you also have student loans, you have a work-study program, and we're also going to talk about that. One of the things that we like to highlight is that there are several sources of financial aid. So of course, tonight we're talking about your federal and state financial aid. But also keep in mind that colleges and universities offer their own financial aid. So this is called institutional aid. And this is financial aid that comes directly from your student's college or university. Also, there are private organizations that offer financial aid in the form of scholarships or grants, and along with professional and service organizations that could offer scholarships and grants. And we also like to remind parents to definitely check with the human resources department at their employer to see if they offer tuition assistance for your children that are attending college. Now, your types of financial aid. So first of all, you have your merit-based financial aid. So a great example of merit-based is the Hope Scholarship. So merit-based means that it is based on your students' academic performance. Their GPA could be their test scores, but it's based mainly on their academic performance. Need-based financial aid is financial aid that is a student can receive based on their household income or household income situation. So a good example of that is a Pell Grant. Non-need-based aid usually has other requirements. So we're going to talk about one of those programs tonight. An example of that non-need-based aid is the Hope Grant. Now, also available to students is the student or parent loans. Well, student loans are available to students, parent loans are available to parents. Also employment opportunities such as the Federal Work-Study Program. So I am going to talk a little bit about the Federal Work-Study Program. Another type of aid is military aid and grants. So if your student or the parent is a member of a military organization, they may have some type of financial aid available to the student to pay for their post-secondary education. And lastly, savings plans. So here in Georgia, we use the Path to College 529, but some students actually have access to traditional savings accounts that were started for their education. So savings plans do count as a form or a type of financial aid. Now, when we talk about scholarships, most students think that all scholarships are based on their academic performance. And actually, there are thousands of scholarships out there that are not attached to a student's academic performance. There are scholarships for vegetarians. There's scholarships based on a student's height or gender or religious affiliation. So we really want to recommend that students, you really want to recommend that students search for the different scholarships that are available. It's very important that students realize that they do not have to pay for scholarships. So if you have a scholarship out there and it's asking for some type of fee or some type of payment, you definitely want to double check to make sure that's an actual scholarship. Scholarships should be free. If you visit our website, gafutures.org, we actually have a scholarship search tool on our homepage. And this scholarship search tool is a database of local and national scholarships. The last time I jumped on there and just kind of looked around, there was over 5,200 scholarships on there. So definitely we recommend that students visit our website for our scholarship search tool to help with their scholarship search. So next, let's talk about federal aid programs. So federal financial aid is financial aid that is available for students to use at any accredited institution in the United States. So there are, of course, some requirements, some eligibility requirements. It's important for students and parents to know that these requirements are for the student, not the parent. So the student must be a US citizen or an eligible non-citizen. The student must be a high school graduate or GED recipient and must be enrolled in an eligible degree or certificate program at an eligible institution in the United States. The student also must have a valid social security number or alien registration number. Now, I just want to go over the programs that are available through federal financial aid. So first of all, the Pell Grant. So the Pell Grant is the most popular program. The Pell Grant is for students, undergraduate students with financial need, and it's based off of information that the student and the parent will include or provide on the federal application. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the federal application later. So the Pell Grant, the maximum amount for Pell Grant can change every year. So the Pell Grant for the upcoming school year, again, for college students is $68.95, but that can change. So you just want to check with the financial aid office at your student's institution to see what the maximum amount of Pell Grant will be for their current year. Another program is the Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant. You will hear institutions call this the SEOG. The SEOG is an additional grant for students that are receiving the Pell Grant. Again, you do have to be an undergraduate student with exceptional financial need. The amount of SEOG that a student can receive can differ. It just kind of depends on the student's eligibility based on what was put on the FAFSA. Now, the thing about the SEOG is that it is a first come, first serve type of funding. So I've heard some rumors from other parents or from parents sometimes where they think that financial aid can run out. In terms of federal programs, in terms of federal financial aid, the only program that can actually run out of funding is the SEOG. And the reason is because it's because institutions receive a bucket of funding. So not every institution does receive SEOG funds. And those that do, they receive a certain amount to last for the year. And what they actually do is look at a student's eligibility by seeing if they are eligible for a full Pell Grant, and then also how early they completed the FAFSA. So the FAFSA is the federal application for financial aid. That application comes out on October 1st of each year. So this is just one of the ways that an institution will actually be able to determine if a student is eligible for the SEOG. So they must have a Pell Grant, and they must be, it's like I said, it's a first come, first serve. So the earlier the student completed the FAFSA, the better chance they have at receiving those funds. Now, another grant available through federal financial aid is the Teach Grant. And this is for undergraduate and graduate students. And the student must be majoring in education. The student must serve as a full-time teacher in a certain type of school for a certain amount of time. So they do have to make that commitment in order to receive the Teach Grant. If for some reason the student doesn't fulfill that commitment, the grant does turn into a loan. But at the beginning, as long as they agree to that commitment, it is a grant. Now, the Federal Work Study Program also falls under a grant program because the student does not have to pay the funds back. And the Federal Work Study Program actually allows a student to work on campus and receive a paycheck for the hours that they work. The great thing about the federal work-study program is that a student is considered a student first and an employee second. So they can be sure that they will have plenty of time for their schoolwork and for studying, and also be able to hold a job while they're in school. Now, with federal financial aid, there is the opportunity to apply for student loans. So there are a few types of student loans. You have your direct subsidized loan, your direct unsubsidized loan, and your federal plus loan. So keep in mind, anytime loan is behind the name of the program, it means that it does have to be repaid. So the direct subsidized loan is for undergraduate students. The interest for a direct subsidized loan is paid by the government while the student is enrolled at least half time. So the student is actually not responsible for the interest until after they graduate or if they drop below halftime. The direct unsubsidized loan, again, is for undergraduate students or graduate students. The student is actually responsible for paying the interest while they are in school and after they graduate from school. Now, those interest payments can be deferred until after they graduate, but they do accrue while the student is in school. Parent Plus loans, these are loans for parents of undergraduate students. The interest rate differs. It can change every year, and actually for all the loans, the interest rates can change every year. So you do want to check with the financial aid office to see what the interest rates are for student loans for your student and for parents if you're taking out a parent loan during the time that you're going to actually be taking out those loans. But the parent loan is something that's completely in the parent's name, where the student loans are completely in the student's name. The students are responsible for student loans. Now here, this is just a chart that we provide to give you an idea of how much a student can borrow in student loans. Freshmen in college are eligible for $3,500 in subsidized or unsubsidized loans, just based on whichever one they were qualified for. And they can, if the student is an independent student, they can actually borrow another $3,500 in student loans. So these amounts are pretty much the same every year. But again, this is information that your financial aid office at the institution will provide. All right, next, let's talk about Georgia's financial aid programs. So we always tell students and parents to think of the HOPE program as a family, and the Georgia Lottery as the parent. So whenever we say HOPE programs, this includes several fundings: HOPE Scholarship, Zell Miller Scholarship, HOPE Grant, Zell Miller Grant, and the HOPE Career Grant all fall under HOPE programs. Now, of course, there are general eligibility requirements for the HOPE programs, our HOPE program. First of all of this, again, the requirements are for the student, not the parent. So the student must be a U.S. citizen or an eligible non-citizen and must be a legal resident of Georgia. If the student is a male over the age of 18, he must be registered with Selective Service. The student must be working toward their first undergraduate program, and the student must be attending an eligible post-secondary institution. So here's a list of the eligible post-secondary institutions. Keep in mind that the HOPE program doesn't travel outside of Georgia. So all of the eligible institutions are going to be here in Georgia. They include public, private, and technical colleges and universities. And of course, this list, I know it's kind of small, but this list is on our website. All of the information that I'm providing to you this evening is on our website on gafutures.org. All right, so it is time for a question. The question is, can you use the Hope Scholarship at an institution outside of Georgia? So put in your votes. All right, let's see. So far, I see 13 people, 14 have voted. How many do we have on the line? Oh, 69. So I'm going to give it a little bit more time. Okay, we're up to 20. When we hit 25, I'm going to give you the correct answer. Let's see, we're at 91%. No, 4% yes, 4% option 3. What option 3 is? Okay, so we're at 25. So 92% of you said no. So that answer is actually correct. Georgia does not travel outside of, I'm sorry, Hope Scholarship does not travel outside of Georgia. There are very few cases where a student may be able to use the Hope Scholarship at an institution outside of Georgia. That's if no institution in Georgia offers that particular major. I think the number for that is like 1%, is very, very small. So the correct answer is no. Good job. So let's talk about the Hope Scholarship. That's my lead into Hope Scholarship. So the Hope Scholarship is a program available for students in Georgia, of course, to help pay for educational costs. The general eligibility for the Hope program does play here, in addition to other eligibility requirements. So of course, the student must be pursuing, in order to receive the Hope Scholarship, a student must be pursuing an associate's or a bachelor's degree. The student must graduate from high school with a 3.0 high school Hope GPA. And the student must also have completed 4 academically rigorous course credits. Now, rigorous course credits are your AP, IB, and dual enrollment courses. Students can also receive or have academic rigor course credits that are advanced courses. So your biology, your chemistry, a second or third year of foreign language are all considered advanced courses. So if you have a question about whether you are completing advanced courses, please feel free to go to our website. We do have a list of all of the rigor courses for the state of Georgia. Now, your high school Hope GPA is what is used to determine whether or not a student is eligible for the Hope Scholarship. And that high school Hope GPA is also on our website. So hopefully every student that's on the call, or every parent of a student on the call, has a GA Futures account. And if you don't have a GA Futures account for some reason, please go on and create one today. It takes about 5 minutes. It's a very fast process. But if you do have an account, you just want to log into your account and click on My High School Hope GPA. And there you'll be able to see, let me see, I think I have a screenshot of it. Yes. So there you'll be able to see your calculated Hope GPA and also how many academic rigor course credits the student has earned at that point. Now, once the student is in college and has received, earned the Hope Scholarship when they graduated from high school, there are checkpoints to make sure the student can continue to be eligible to receive Hope Scholarship. So the checkpoints are going to be at 30, 60, and 90 semester credit hours if the student is attending a university that's on a semester basis. If they're attending a university that's on a quarter system, it's going to be 45, 90, and 135 quarter hours. Also, at the end of every spring semester or quarter, they will check to make sure that the student has a 3.0 college Hope GPA. So it's very important to keep your GPA up throughout college to continue receiving Hope Scholarship. Now, the student can also keep track of their college Hope GPA in the same way, where they can go to gafutures.org, log into their account, and click on My College Hope Profile. So now it's time for another question. So high school Hope GPA requirement for the your high school Hope GPA requirement for the Hope Scholarship. What is the high school Hope GPA requirement for the Hope Scholarship? All right, we have some quick voters. So far, we have 100%. Perfect, perfect. Great, you all are listening. That is awesome. So the correct answer is 3.0. Great job. So next, let's talk about the Zell Miller Scholarship. So the Zell Miller Scholarship is another program available for students in Georgia that are pursuing a bachelor's or associate's degree. Now, in terms of the eligibility requirements, if the student is the valedictorian or the salutatorian of their high school class, they are automatically eligible for the Zell Miller Scholarship. All other students must have a 3.7 high school Hope GPA, have completed 4 academically rigorous course credits, and have at least a 1200 on the SAT or a 26 on the ACT. Now, once the student is provided or is awarded the Zell Miller Scholarship upon graduating from high school, they do have to maintain their GPA in order to continue receiving it through college. So the GPA that they're going to need to maintain is at least a 3.3 college Hope GPA throughout college in order to continue receiving the Zell Miller Scholarship. Now, there are a few ways that a student can lose the Hope or Zell Miller Scholarship. One is by not maintaining the GPA requirement. So again, keep in mind when a student is in college, the student must maintain a 3.0 GPA in order to continue receiving Hope, or a 3.3 in order to continue receiving Zell Miller Scholarship. Also, by reaching the maximum attempted hours. So there is a maximum of credit hours that the scholarships will pay. For a bachelor's degree, it usually takes a student about 120 semester hours in order to earn a bachelor's degree. They can actually use the Hope or Zell Miller Scholarship to pay up to 127. Now, another way that students can lose the funds is by not using them within 10 years of high school graduation. So one of the questions I do receive often is whether a student that is receiving Hope Scholarship or Zell Miller Scholarship can take a gap year or start college a year later after high school, and you definitely can. So you have up to 10 years to use the funds for Hope or Zell Miller Scholarship. And lastly, the last way that a student can lose a Hope or Zell Miller Scholarship is by receiving their bachelor's degree. Once a student receives their bachelor's degree or their first professional degree, they're no longer eligible for Hope or Zell Miller Scholarship or Hope programs. The programs do not pay for graduate school. All right, so let's continue on to Hope Grants. Hope Grant, Hope programs. So first, let's talk about the Hope Grant. So the Hope Grant is for students that are enrolled in a certificate or diploma program. So these programs are usually at Georgia's technical colleges. Another great thing about the Hope Grant is that your high school GPA is not considered, neither are test scores. So basically, this program is for students that are pursuing a certificate or diploma program at a technical college. They're automatically eligible. And then in order to continue receiving that Hope Grant, they must maintain a 2.0 college cumulative GPA to receive it throughout their program at the technical college. And I say technical college, there are maybe 3 or 4 University System of Georgia schools that offer a certificate or diploma program, but they are usually at our technical colleges here in Georgia. Also available to those students pursuing a certificate or diploma program is the Zell Miller Grant. Now, the difference with the Zell Miller Grant, the student must earn a 3.5 college cumulative GPA first in order to start receiving the Zell Miller Grant. And again, they will check the student's GPA at checkpoints to make sure they have that continue to have that 3.5 college cumulative GPA. Now let's talk about award amounts. So at our Georgia institutions, public institutions, the Hope Scholarship and Hope Grant pay a portion of the tuition, and tuition rates can vary. At our public institutions, the Zell Miller Scholarship and Zell Miller Grant pay full tuition. Now, keep in mind that this is only tuition. So the programs do only pay toward tuition. So they do not pay toward room and board or meal plans or any other educational costs outside of standard tuition. Now, at the private institutions, the Hope Scholarship and Zell Miller Scholarship pay a set amount. And those are those amounts there. And I think I have a slide here. I do not. So if you have any questions, actually, if you go to our website, jfutures.org, we have a tool there where you can actually pull up any institution in the state of Georgia and find out exactly how much Hope or Zell Miller programs will pay at that institution. Now, another program, another grant that's available to students is the Hope Career Grant. So the Hope Career Grant has been a great financial resource for students that are pursuing particular certificate and diploma programs. It was created to build interest and really address an at-risk group of fields. So this is really to help boost Georgia students in majoring in these type of programs. So early childhood care and education, commercial truck driving, automotive, all of these programs, there's about 17 different programs that fall into being eligible for a Hope Career Grant. And this is on top of the Hope Grant or the Zell Miller Grant. And again, this is for students that are pursuing certificate or diploma programs. Oh, good. So we have another question. Where can you find your high school Hope GPA online? All right, so let's see. Jump in there and vote. Let's see, we have 13, 15, 17 votes. We're at 20 so far. Let's see. This is fantastic. Perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and show you the answer. So yes, everyone is correct. The website is gafutures.org. That is where students can log in and check to see check and see where their high school Hope GPA lands at the time that they're checking. They can also see how many academically rigorous course credits they've completed at that point. So perfect. So just some other programs, just want to let you all know that Georgia Student Finance Commission actually administer other programs in the state of Georgia that are not as well known. Some of them are pretty customized. For example, the University of North Georgia Military Scholarship. But all of these programs are on our website. If you go to gafutures.org and click on Hope and State Aid Programs, under state aid applications and forms, you'll see the option there to learn more about the different programs. Also, you can complete an application for those programs. Our GSF app is our in-house application for state aid. So you can actually apply for Hope and Zell Miller through the GSF app. That is one of the ways that you can apply. But again, this is on our website, gafutures.org. And the GSF app is a great resource to use. That application is actually good for 10 years. You just complete it one time and it's good for several years. Now, another way to apply for state aid is through the FAFSA. So let's talk about the FAFSA. The FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid, and it is your first step in your financial aid search. So with the FAFSA, the student can actually apply for federal financial aid and state financial aid. Keep in mind that the application is free, so you should never pay anyone to complete the FAFSA, and it becomes available each year on October 1st. So it is for high school seniors. It is for, well, actually you start completing the application when you are a high school senior. And the first thing that you're going to do when you complete that, you start the process to complete the FAFSA is to create an FSA ID. And actually students and parents can complete their FSA ID anytime. So you don't actually have to wait until your senior year of high school to complete the FSA ID. Your FSA ID is actually a username and password that the student will need to sign into the FAFSA and to sign the FAFSA. A parent will also need their own individual FSA ID, and the parent will need their FSA ID to use the IRS data retrieval tool and to sign the FAFSA. So it's really important that parents and students complete their own FSA ID. Now, when you are ready to complete the FAFSA, this is the website. So actually there's two. So there's FAFSA.gov or studentaid.gov. These are actually pretty much the same website, but we recommend FAFSA.gov. It's just easier to remember in order to start the process, to start the application process. Now, and I'm not sure how many seniors are on the line, but I definitely still wanted to give this information. So there are always going to be two FAFSAs available when a student is starting their application process. Now, if you happen to be on today's call and you are a graduating senior, you're graduating in May of 2023, the FAFSA that you're going to complete is going to be the FAFSA for 2023-2024 in order to start receiving financial aid in the fall of 2023. Now, if you're a graduating senior and you're graduating in May of 2023 and planning to start college in June of 2023, so you're going to jump right into college, you actually want to complete the FAFSA for 2022-2023 and also complete the FAFSA for 2023-2024 so that there's no gap in your financial aid. Now, things that are needed to complete the FAFSA. So your social security number for the student and the parent, federal income tax returns for the student and the parent. If the student worked in 2021, that student can still, and if the student actually filed the tax return for 2021, that tax return would also be required for the FAFSA. Bank statements and investment records, any records of untaxed income, such as child support, and just again, keep in mind that the FSA ID is very important for the student and the parent. And so this slide just goes over how to create the FSA ID. And once again, I do want to remind students and parents that you do not have to wait until the senior year of high school or right before you're completing the FAFSA in order to create the FSA ID. That is something that can be done today. You just want to make sure that you hold on to that information. Just keep it secure. The FSA ID is attached to some very personal information. So when you go to create it, it's going to ask for your social, your date of birth. So you want to make sure that you keep that information secure, but definitely feel free to do that early. I'm just noticing that this year that a lot of students and parents are waiting right before they complete the FAFSA to create their FSA ID. And every so often, it may require additional verification that could take 3 or 4 days. So it does kind of delay the student or the parent in completing their FAFSA when, you know, they were pretty much ready to complete it right then. So this slide just again talks about how important it is to keep that information private and secure. One of the tips that I definitely want to provide to students when you are creating your FSA ID, it's going to ask for your email address, and it's actually going to ask for it when you're completing the FAFSA also. Make sure that you are using a personal email address and not your school email address. This is your federal financial aid file is something that you're going to use for several years. So they will send you emails throughout the years. So you want to make sure that you can have access to those emails. And once you graduate from high school, your school email will no longer be accessible. So make sure that you use your personal email address. Now here, just want to go over the best order to accept aid. So when you are starting that financial aid process and you're hearing back from the schools in terms of what you are eligible for, we just like to, again, remind students the best order to accept financial aid. So the first, of course, would be scholarships and grants. Again, this is free money that does not have to be paid back. You just want to make sure that you understand all of the conditions and that it is truly free, that you are not paying for anything that has to do with a scholarship or grant. Second, of course, would be work study. So again, work study does not have to be paid back. It gives the student the opportunity to work on campus and receive a paycheck, which that student can use to pay whatever expenses is needed. Third would be federal student loans. So with federal student loans, they're a better option than college loans or private loans because federal student loans have a lower interest rate. The repayment options are more flexible usually than any other type of loan. And again, interest does not accrue until repayment for a subsidized student loan. So we highly recommend students choose federal student loans before they choose state government, college loans, or private loans. Nice. So it's time for another question. So completing the FAFSA applies to student for federal financial aid, state financial aid, or both federal and state financial aid? Kind of threw in a trick question. Or is it? All right, let's see. We have 16 votes. We have 18 votes. Uh-oh, we're stuck at 18 votes. Any more votes? Okay, so I'm gonna give you the correct answer. The correct answer is actually both federal and state financial aid. So in the state of Georgia, the FAFSA will apply a student for federal financial aid programs and state financial aid programs, such as the Hope Scholarship, the Zell Miller Scholarship, the Hope Grant, the Zell Miller Grant. So the recommendation, of course, is to complete the FAFSA. We also like to remind students and parents that a lot of times financial aid that is offered by the institution, they also are going to require that the FAFSA is done. So your FAFSA is just kind of a good one-stop shop. It applies to you for federal, state, a lot of your institutional financial aid. All of that is going to require the FAFSA. Great. So just some additional resources. So studentaid.gov. So I mentioned studentaid.gov a few minutes ago when we were talking about the FAFSA. So you can go to FAFSA.gov or studentaid.gov. Like I mentioned earlier, it's pretty much the same website. They kind of combine those websites. So studentaid.gov is not only the place where you would complete the FAFSA, but it has all of the information about federal financial aid. So every question that you can probably think of is on studentaid.gov. Also, what I've noticed in the last, since October 1st, is a lot of questions that really are federal financial aid questions. I've been referring students to studentaid.gov. So there's been some questions about citizenship. There's been situations where students are locked out of their FSA ID. So all of those are topics that you would contact federal student aid. And if you go to studentaid.gov, there's a contact us option there. And I use it myself. I love their online chat. So you can actually live chat with a representative. I actually went on there today and I just typed in my question, and 30 seconds later, a representative was on the line, and I could ask that person whatever questions I have, and they respond right away. So I love the live chat. But yes, keep in mind that studentaid.gov is a great resource for questions about federal financial aid. And also, of course, we're going to recommend gafutures.org. That is our website. We try to be the go-to for state financial aid. So if you have any questions or you want more information about state financial aid, please visit our website. We also, of course, have that scholarship search tool that I spoke about earlier. We actually have a college search tool on our website also, where students can gain more information about the different colleges and universities in Georgia. And there's a list of our financial aid events that our outreach team provide throughout the year, including webinars. So definitely please visit our GA Futures website. And of course, keep up with your high school Hope GPA on there. So that's your next steps. If you do not have a GA Futures account, please create an account today, just so you can keep track of your high school Hope GPA. If you do have an account, you want to jump on there every year and just make sure you're still on track for a Hope or Zell Miller scholarship. And if you are a senior, you definitely want to go ahead and complete the FAFSA. It became available October 1st. So completing it as soon as possible is a great idea. And here we also like to provide information about our outreach team. So there's 9 of us across the country. We're there to help you if you have any questions about the HOPE programs, or if you need help with completing the FAFSA, please feel free to reach out to us. Again, I'm Adrienne Langford. That's my email address and my phone number. And then also want to give you the direct line to Georgia Student Finance Commission. Again, if you have any questions, we have a group of customer service people that are there to answer any questions. It's not an automated line. You actually do talk to a person. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us directly. And we also want to invite you to connect with us on social media. So we are on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and especially active on Instagram. So please connect with us, and we try to provide the latest information in financial aid, federal and state. And Ms. Fitzsimmons, that's it for me. So I'm going to open the line for any questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ms. Langford. I was jotting down a couple questions that we wanted to just get some clarification on.
Okay.
Okay, so the first one is, if a student goes out of state for their first year of college and then transfers back into a college in Georgia, are they eligible for HOPE?
So if they received HOPE, well, let me change that. So if they received HOPE, if they received Zell Miller when they graduated from high school, Zell Miller Scholarship, when they graduated from high school, they could be still interested, still eligible for the program. What the financial aid office is going to do is look at the credits that they earned while they were away at another school. So they still do have to meet the GPA requirements. So if they attended a school out of state for a year, and they're transferring to Georgia State, Georgia State's financial aid office is going to look at those classes that they took at that institution to make sure they still meet the GPA requirements as if they were here in Georgia.
Okay, perfect. And then when parents are filling out the FAFSA, if both parents are doing it, do they both need an FSA ID, or can there just be, one parent has the FSA ID and both of them can share it?
Right. So it's just one parent that will need their FSA ID. And keep in mind that the FSA ID is individual and is for that particular parent only. So it's attached to that parent's social security number. So if that parent has other children that they need to complete a FAFSA for, they will use that same FSA ID for those children also. Or if the parent decides to go back to college themselves and they are applying for financial aid, that is their FSA ID as a student. So the FSA ID is attached to the person's social security number, and it is the same FSA ID for a lifetime.
Okay. And when you are creating the FSA ID, you're going to use a personal email.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
If a parent doesn't have a tax return, can they still qualify for FAFSA and HOPE?
The parent will have to have completed their tax return in order to apply with the FAFSA. So if the student is a graduating senior, they're completing the FAFSA for 2023, 2024. The FAFSA that is required is, I'm sorry, the tax return that is required is from 2021. So it's what we call prior. It's basically 2 years. So the parent will have to have that tax return completed in order to complete the FAFSA.
And if a parent doesn't have a tax return, then they cannot do the FAFSA.
Correct. So that tax information will not be able to be put into the FAFSA, which will cause their student not to be packaged for financial aid correctly. So the student wouldn't be eligible for anything.
Okay. Okay. We just had another question too. If parents are getting divorced and they're splitting the cost of their child's education, at that point, would they need 2 FSA IDs, or could it still only be one of the parents?
It's still just one. So just one signature is required on the FAFSA.
Okay.
One parent's signature.
Okay. And then let me see, it looks like. So can you talk about more when you were talking, you mentioned that if an undergraduate course is not available in Georgia, in certain cases, the HOPE scholarship is eligible to travel outside of Georgia. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, so that's on a very slim, very slim situation. I couldn't tell you exactly what the majors are, but I think it's maybe 5 majors. I couldn't tell you exactly, but
Okay.
it rarely happens. So it's best to just keep in mind that Hope does not travel outside of Georgia.
Okay. And is that different from the academic common market?
What is that? I don't know what that is. Is that a different application? Some type of application?
Yeah, sorry, this is Ms. Blunt. I'm one of the counselors. So the academic common market is there's like 13 or 14 states, kind of southeastern states that have an agreement between each other that if say a student that's a resident of Georgia wants to pursue mortuary science, then they can go to a college in Oklahoma for in-state tuition. Because that
Oh, okay.
that degree is not offered in the state of Georgia. So that's not even what you're talking about, right?
Right. No, it's not related
Okay,
to
okay.
Hope programs.
Okay. I think we. Okay, I think. Can you maybe talk? There was a little confusion around the selective service and when the student is turning 18 and filling out. Can you talk more about, what happens if when the parent and or child is filling out FAFSA and they haven't turned 18 yet? Like, can you
Right.
just kind of talk a little more so we can be clear on that timeline?
Sure. So if the student is 17, they're fine. So they will not have to register for selective service. But say they turn 18 right before they start college, the financial aid office at the institution will send you a letter. So they will let you know, hey, we noticed that your birthday was such and so date. You're going to make 18 before you start classes. In order to receive financial aid, you have to register for selective service. So it is upon their 18th birthday that is a requirement.
Okay. Okay. Trying to see what other questions in the chat are having come up.
Oh, yeah, sure.
I can't tell.
Laurel, I can help.
Okay, thanks, Tammy.
All right, this is Tammy.
Yeah.
All right, so one question is if FSAI is FSID a generated number or an email ID or username?
So the FSA ID is a username and password that the student and the parent will create. So your FS, basically, it's just like any other program that you log into, social media, anything you log in, there's a username and password. Well, for federal student aid, that username and password is called an FSA ID.
All right, the next question is what if the parents are divorced and splitting the cost of their child's education? Need two FSA IDs then?
No, just one parent has to have an FSA ID for the FAFSA.
All right, next question is when does a student get notified if they've been awarded any of the HOPE programs? Does that vary by the school?
Well, actually, the student will know. They should be checking their GA Futures account. That information will be on their GA Futures account because it's going to tell them what their GPA, their high school HOPE GPA, and how many academically rigorous course credits they've completed whenever they check their GA Futures account. In terms of award letter, it completely depends on the institution when they send out their award letters, when they package for financial aid. So some schools will send out a preliminary award letter before the student graduates, and based on information that they provided will say, oh, it looks like you'll be eligible for HOPE programs or HOPE scholarship or Zell Miller scholarship. But basically the information comes on the award letter. It comes from the institution and it's up to the institution when they send that information out. But it does happen before they start their fall semester in college.
Next question is, what is the deadline to complete the Hope Zell Miller Scholarship?
To complete the application, so you do have to complete the application before you graduate from high school, and I'm guessing, I'm not sure of that question. To complete completing the FAFSA, you want to complete that as soon as possible. So in terms of financial aid deadlines, every institution has their own priority financial aid deadline. It's completely up to the institution when those deadlines are. Usually it could be, well, let me not say usually, because every time I talk to a school, it's a different date. So it could be January, it could be February, it could be March. In terms of priority deadlines, but there's not a deadline to be eligible for Hope. I'm not sure of that question. I'm not sure I understand that question.
All right. Next question is, if a parent has a FAFSA ID from their own school loans, is that the same one they will need to use to apply for their child?
Yes. So the FSA ID is attached to the person's social security number. So the same FSA ID they would use to sign as a parent on their students on their child's FAFSA is the same FSA ID they would use themselves as a student.
Is
Yeah.
the on Georgia Futures, the scholarship search tool, is that a national database or is that only specific to schools that are in Georgia?
It's actually local and national.
Okay, perfect. And then, and I know you went over this, but just to reiterate, on the Georgia Futures website, there is a list of all of the institutes, private and public, in the state of Georgia where a student would be eligible to receive Hope or Zell Miller.
Yes. So all of the private, public, and technical colleges.
All right.
Okay, I think
I think
that looks like, I think that's all of the ones that we weren't able to answer on our own that we wanted to just get some clarification. And if you wouldn't mind, maybe can you put up the slide, Ms. Langford, that has like the email address for you
Oh,
again,
yeah,
just
definitely. Sure.
just in case, that way parents can maybe, take
Oh,
a
yeah, feel
picture
free.
of it. Yeah, that way they can reach out to you or one of the other representatives if they have other questions.
Definitely.
Okay. Well, thank you again so much for a very informative presentation on financial aid. There's a lot of information that has to be considered. So it's always great to hear it year after year to just solidify what we already know and then to give the parents new information if they haven't heard it.
Yes, definitely. And I again encourage everyone to visit studentaid.gov for information about federal financial aid. I've never received a question that they could not answer. And also GA Futures, if you have questions about the Hope programs or state financial aid, our website is pretty resourceful for the information.
Wonderful. Great. Okay. Well then, we can stay on for a couple more minutes just in case, for our counselors who are answering questions in the chat and if anyone has any last minute questions. But thank you again, Miss Langford, for coming and for sharing all of this information with us. We really appreciate it.
You are welcome. I hope everyone has a great evening.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.